Right, welcome to another Keeping It Business podcast. I have the lovely Becca and Michelle with me here. So introduce yourselves and introduce your business.
Want to go first, Michelle, or me?
Go on, you can start us off.
I'll start. So I'm Becca. So I am one part of Aspire Training Solutions. I would definitely say not the better half of it. I will give that one for Michelle.
We'll come back to that one.
Don't listen
About to say. Yeah. In terms of what we do, we have a business we set up about 14 months ago now, Michelle. Looking at combining our passions around wellbeing in terms of our backgrounds, which we'll no doubt get into, but thinking about how we can support organisations in getting them to build their wellbeing awareness and supporting their staff. So that's basically our day in, day out, is thinking about other people's wellbeing and how we can help them.
Brilliant. Michelle, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Michelle. I'm definitely the shorter half of Aspire Training Solutions, if nothing else. And yeah, as Becca said, bringing together the things that we seem to both be interested and passionate in, and have started on this venture just into our second year now.
Excellent. Superb. Right, I'm going to start with Michelle then. So,
Okay.
What did you want to be when you left school, left college, left university? Where did it all start for you?
Grew up. Oh, I was one of those people that never quite knew what I wanted to do. So coming out of doing my GCSEs and A-levels, I wasn't one of those people who had a clear path. So I did my GCSE and A-levels, but then I went into the world of work a bit, and I did a bit of, first of all, working in a legal firm, doing a bit of reception type admin, which was quite interesting, very small firm. So I was thrown in the deep end in a few legal situations when no one else was free. So it's quite interesting. But I did that and then worked at an accountant. And quite early, I think I just got to that stage, very early 20s, when I went, I can't do just this for another 40 years. What am I really passionate about? And that's when I took a back step and ended up going to university as a mature student, allegedly, and did psychology and criminology, because that's what I was just interested in. I was nosy. I wanted to know why people do the stuff they do, particularly the extreme stuff. So I ended up studying and doing criminology and psychology. So I started off in a sort of crime and forensics field.
All right, fantastic. We'll come back to that criminology side. I'm interested in that. So what about you, Becca?
So, to be honest, I wasn't very academic at school. It really only became, I suppose, I've always ended up having to be passionate about something to be able to apply myself to it. So I wouldn't say I was bad at school in any shape or form, but I certainly didn't have the motivation in the same way, because I don't think it was what I really wanted to be doing. So I was very much actually involved in the Duke of Edinburgh Award when I was growing up, when I was at school, and actually ended up being a Duke of Edinburgh leader at one stage in my life. So I was very much about being outdoors and doing things. So I always wanted to be hands-on. So there was a stage before I even thought about applying to university, I wanted to be in the forces. So it was all about teamwork, all about wanting to be in a group, feeling like you belong. I suppose that's it, is what I was missing when I was at school. Was never one of the children in the school that was bullied particularly, but never really felt like I fit in anywhere. It was never like a group that I felt that I was belonged to. And I think that that's what appealed to me about the forces. And for one reason or another, it just never panned out that way. And it was a university life for me. So again, it was very similar to Michelle. What do I want? If I'm going to study, what am I going to study that's going to make me tick? And it was always about people. It's why do people do the things they do? And so that drew me to psychology. So that's where I went. And very much like Michelle, actually, coincidence that I went forensic psychology first of all, but then actually detoured off into just general psychology and much more around the clinical side. So I ended up much more involved in child and adolescent mental health services in my line of work, whereas Michelle went more prison service, and then into adult mental health. So that's kind of my route in comparison to sort of Michelle. So originally, didn't really see myself in an academic role in that sort of sense.
Okay. So your first role then was in the children's side. So was your first? Where did you go, or what was your first position coming out of university then for you? What was your first?
When I left uni, it was basically me and my now husband. It was a race. Who can get a job first? So it was, we'll go anywhere in the country, but who gets the job first? And I drew the lucky straw with that one. So I got a job as an assistant psychologist. So straight out of uni, I went over to Norfolk and Suffolk that way on, and went out to work for an NHS trust out there, and actually worked in Great Yarmouth for the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service for Learning Disabilities. So I worked with families and young children that had a diagnosis of a learning disability or were in the process of exploring that as an avenue. So I would do quite a lot of the cognitive assessments for children and being part of that whole diagnosis path, and then supporting the families with that diagnosis and how they can support their children with that. So yeah, it was a whirlwind year, but it was fantastic out there doing that. Loved it.
How long did you do that for?
Oh, probably about 18 months, I think, in all, before we moved back, because then it was my husband's job. He works in education. So we've always kind of been ping-ponging around the country, I suppose, for jobs in various roles and trying to support each other in pursuing those goals and what we wanted to achieve. But yeah, so it was then drawn back to the Midlands for his education sort of side of things. And then it was looking at mental health, but in an adult setting for me.
Okay, good. Okay. So, Michelle? So did you go straight into sort of like the criminology prison side, service side, or was a?
Yeah, well, I came out of university and then I was sort of like late 20s at that point because I went as a mature student, and I ended up moving from where I'm originally from, and I got a job in the prison service. I'd been doing some volunteering while I was studying, so I moved down more towards the Midlands from where I am, and spent about 3 years in all working in a couple of different prisons, doing offending behaviour side of things, so doing a lot of treatment needs assessments, and then working on delivering programs for behaviour change programs, anger management, getting involved in some of the sex offender treatment programs, things like that within the prison service, and eventually moved back to where I'm from, around Nottinghamshire, to be closer to family and friends, because I never really took root anywhere else. So I came back there. But I spent about three and a half years in the prison service as my first key role, was my baptism of fire, if you like.
Okay. And so where did you go from there then? So for prison service, 3 years, where did it go for you?
Yeah, then I went to the NHS. So I moved over to sort of more community-based adult mental health, and that's when I started my role as what's called a PWP, or psychological wellbeing practitioner. And I did that it was about 10 years before I actually left that clinical role. So I spent a good decade doing that and gaining experience and doing slightly different projects within that. And that's kind of where we started to converge, because Becca was off doing that somewhere else.
Right. So coming full back then into Becca. So you're back now into local area. So
yeah. So I gravitated back to where I was from, which is sort of the Leicestershire patch, if you like. And yeah, got a job as a trainee psychological wellbeing practitioner. Did my training year, qualified, then went to, again, it was Nottinghamshire service technically, but they cover a big patch. So I was in the Leicestershire kind of base within that. And yeah, so that was slowly, we were kind of converging on the same sort of careers, weren't we? And then it was inevitable that we'd finally cross paths.
So, full circle then, how did that path cross?
I suppose I went from being a PWP in the service to becoming a senior PWP, and my job was specifically at the time, we had quite a lot of trainees coming through the service. So they allocated my role, which was going to be just supporting the trainees. So they were at the local university studying part-time, and then they were in service, obviously clinically practicing, and I was their supervisor. And that's where I sort of joined up with some of the team over at the university and started to know a little bit more about what they were doing on the programme in terms of the academic side of the training, and got involved with sort of what they were doing a little bit. So I was all in all, I think, supervisor for just over the year. And then just as it happened that actually a job came up at the university. So I then split my time. So I would still continue clinically practicing and have my clinics with my patients for half of the week. And then I would go and do a academic sort of role within the lecturing team at the university and would train the students from a sort of education point of view. So I had the best of both worlds, really. Okay. And that's where me and Michelle kind of collided.
Okay. So Michelle, you were at the university then, studying or lecturing, or?
No, I joined as a senior lecturer. I think I joined only a few months before Becca actually came over and joined part-time. Yeah. So I think Becca was familiar with the team. So I actually met Becca in the context of her being a supervisor first. and then she came over to join us, and then we ended up working there really closely, just becoming really close friends over about three and a half years that we were there.
Okay. So, what brought the decision then to set up the business?
Oh, lots of things, I guess. I think part of it was, I think Michelle's already mentioned, that 3 years was intense in lots of ways, in that we'd formed such a good friendship. Our husbands are really good friends. So it all fit together perfectly. And I think, like with any job, really, you get to a stage where you think, where next? What comes next? I think one of the limitations of what we were doing was we had lots of different ideas about well-being and what we could do, but actually part of the nature of the course is that you're limited to one thing that you're talking about and you're training, because they're very specific practitioners that we were training. So there were some limitations within that. So I think naturally you start to get to the point of what next? And I think for one reason or another, it just, when that came to an end, we got our heads together and thought, what do we both want to do now?
And I think that will compete for jobs, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was either we're going to be going for the same jobs and we're going to be competition, or we better team up and do something. So that made for a very interesting, not this last Christmas, but the Christmas before, an interesting one of, okay, so now where? Okay. And so I think between lots of gins and a few wines and thinking, what do we love about what we do and where are we going next? It came to this conclusion that actually we could maybe do something here. And I think that's where Aspire kind of started to be sort of born, really, from there.
Okay. Okay. Who was the one to first mention and put the idea forward?
That's a really good question, actually. I think I might have mentioned something about, I think this would be a really good opportunity to not have to work by anybody else's kind of structures ever again. So I think this nice way of, I think we all can relate to that feeling of having lots of ideas, but not necessarily the constraints of any organisation where you can't always see that through. I think that this was an opportunity for us to kind of make our own rules as to what we wanted to do with our time and how that manifested. I think that was quite exciting for me. I don't know about you, Michelle.
Yeah. Becca's really positive. I always found that Becca always carries me along with some positivity. And I think it was just trying to decide and compare, well, what are you going to do next? Or what are you going to do next? So I'd love to work for more like a training type company. And it was just Becca, well, we could do that. There's no reason why we can't do that. So I think it was just kind of planting that seed and actually playing with that idea a bit. And then, oh, yeah, of course we could.
Yeah, I think I'm probably the one that a bit clueless goes and says, yeah, sure, we can do that. We can definitely do that.
And what was the partners like when your partners when you started broaching this?
Do you know what? All credit to them. I would say they were both incredibly supportive. I think a little bit thinking, okay, yeah, we can do that. I'm sure they've never said it, but I'm sure Nick would most probably say that it was a bit apprehensive about, how's this going to pan out? Obviously, on top of that, I found out in January, just as we had started Aspire Training Solutions, that I was pregnant. So obviously that threw another spanner in the works of, okay, so not only are we setting up our own business, but I'm also going to be a mum this year. So how are we going to juggle all of this? So I think there was lots of, how is this going to pan out? But I don't think they've ever wavered in terms of their support for us. I think that's, thankfully, anyway.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. And I suppose when you look at this, in some ways, is that there's a hardship. There's no two ways about it. There's a hardship to starting a business and doing a startup and getting into it. But it's a great time for having a little, in my opinion, for having a little. It's one of the reasons I set up my business. I was spending way too much time travelling abroad and missing my little one's growth. So I made the decision, and I think there's something about having your own business, and it gives you that little bit. Well, it gives you a lot of freedom to make sure you can concentrate on it. Because family for me is number one on everything. So yeah, it is hard. It's harder, but you're there. That's the main thing.
I think that's it. I mean, we've had that conversation, haven't we, Michelle, about how I don't know how I would be able to do it now, going back, thinking if I was on maternity leave, obviously, when you have your own business, that doesn't quite pan out the same way. But if I had been on maternity leave, the thought of having to go back to work and doing I used to commute a good hour and 40 minutes to work each way. The thought of that would have been looming in the back of my mind now. I don't think that would have been a particularly good place to have been.
Yeah. So, Now we've got Aspire. So tell me, where did the name come from?
Interesting.
We debated lots of different versions of names, but I think we were thinking about things that meant something to us, and we'd often use the term aspire or aspiring to be when it trying to get an ethos for the business, even thinking about what we had the freedom to do as people who own their own business compared to working for someone else. Thinking about very passionate about integrity and what we do and doing it to a good standard that we're happy with. That was something we were really keen on embodying. And we just kept coming back to, well, if we're aspiring to be this and aspiring to be that, and it just seemed to fit. And then as soon as we'd said it, everything else we came up with just didn't compare to aspire. So I think we went around in circles, but we just kept coming back to it, didn't we?
Yeah, it was just to the point where it stopped sounding like a word at one point, you know, because you kept saying it over and over again. I think when we designed the logo as well, it was like, have we spelt that right? You know, and you double take because you've been looking at the same word so many times. I think you must have proofed it about 10 times.
Yeah, it's unlike with my first business, which is TCM UK Limited, I made the fatal mistake with the name TCM UK because it's a TV channel.
Is it?
Yeah, TCM UK is the TCM, which is all the old films. So I get quite a lot of messages on mine saying, your film last night was too loud. Why is it? Yeah, and then it goes on like that, and I have to go back to it. So, rule number one, just double check on your name when you're setting up a business. Because it was originally Total Change Management UK, because it was manufacturing, everything to do with manufacturing consultancy. And then it just became TCM UK Limited. I wouldn't have done it in that first instance. So, tell us a little bit more then about Aspire Training.
What do you want to know, Adam?
Tell this is your chance to tell everybody what you do. So,
I guess for me, Aspire Training Solutions, what we're trying to do is give people not just the knowledge and the skills that I think that a lot, as it says on the tin, as a training provider, what we're trying to do, but it's not just that. It's about the confidence to be able to do it, because I think you can know something and you can be given the skills to do it, but it's, are you confident to actually execute it? And I think that for me is a big part of when we're thrashing around our kind of content. It's, does this empower people to be able to believe that they're able to do it and actually follow that through? So I think we really give a lot of thought to those sorts of things, don't we, Michelle? In terms of how we plan definitely.
That. I think through my training, right from doing psychology, but definitely through my training as a PWP and CBT based work that I've done and training, so cognitive behavioural therapy, learned a lot of skills that I would impart to patients and clients. But I always enjoyed being able to give people those these little aha moments where you give them a bit of a rationale of something, you give them something that you suddenly see they feel they can use. It's almost like you feel that tool go into their bag or that piece of armour go on. And I really enjoyed that about the work. And I think doing that in different contexts, I got the same thing from students when we were training them, giving them knowledge that they felt better at their job. And I think that's just something I wanted to keep and replicate going through, giving people those aha moments and those things where they walk out feeling better, because I know some of these things work really well, both from just using them clinically and taking them on board for my own life as I've been through the last couple of decades. You pick up these tips and tricks and you just want to share them because they really help. Yeah.
So how do you go about this? Do you do for those that don't know, because I do, but for group training, do you do coaching? Do you do the mentoring side? Do you all of that? Is it a whole host of different stuff? So what is it that what other sort of like avenues, other things do you do? What sort of content and stuff do you deliver? One-to-one, one-to-many?
Yeah, so we set up the business to predominantly do face-to-face. I never even thought about doing online training sessions. Obviously, with the world that it was in the last year, very quickly we learned that everything was going to be online for the foreseeable. So we had to think quite quick and quite smart around how can we replicate what we wanted out of the face-to-face training room. So I think that's one of our things that we pride ourselves on a lot, is that the dynamic between the two of us. I think because we are good friends, as we've said, we have a very similar ethos in terms of how we want to work and our work ethic. It comes across and it comes alive in that training room together. And so I think some of that is, how do we replicate that and maintain some of that in the way that we deliver online training? So we've invested in lots of different tools that allow us to kind of incorporate that engagement with our attendees in a training session. But we very much focus on skills development, don't we, Michelle? So it's much more thinking about, at the moment, we're doing some work around wellbeing with an organisation, some wellbeing training. We've worked quite closely with a lot of a legal firm at the moment, which has been doing various things around supervision training. So again, skills focused, applying some of our evidence-based CBT approaches. So things like we've been doing some sleep work with an organisation. So looking at improving sleep, managing anxiety, worry, stress, you name it. Anything that comes under that wellbeing bracket, we can kind of tackle, really. We've even been open to the fact that we do bespoke work. So if it's something that we don't say that we do, but you're really interested in something, that's something that we can definitely look at and work with people as to, okay, what's your end goal? What do you want your team, or yourself, if it's an individual that is booking that training for an organisation, what is it that you want yourself or your team to achieve from that? And then let's work backwards, because for us, it's all about what you do afterwards. The training is null and void unless it results in a shift, whether that's a behavioural shift, a mindset shift, whatever it might be. Unless there's something that shifts at the other end of it, it's just us talking at people, isn't it?
Yeah, knowledge. The saying is, knowledge is power, and no, it's not. It is potential power. Till you actually do something with it, that is when it becomes power. Yeah. So from Michelle, Becca spoke about the COVID side there. Mm-hmm. How did that throw a spanner in to it?
Threw a whole toolbox in, I think, to start with. I mean, we were just getting on our feet in terms of, we'd just got some bookings for some work sort of in the March of that year. We were just starting to feel like we were doing something and it could work. And then suddenly you got this on the horizon, and it was, right, okay, so we'll have to postpone that, or we'll have to just forget that for now. And I think, Becca might correct me, but I think quite fairly, I think we had about a month where we just froze. And we were like, well, let's just see what happens. That first lockdown of 6 weeks-ish, it was like, well, let's not do anything too rash. Let's think, let's see what happens, and hopefully we can just postpone all this a few weeks. And then I think very quickly we realised that wasn't what was going to happen. And we started to think about adapting that. So our early pieces of work, we adapted a couple of those for people that had booked them, just to give them something online that they can distribute to their staff. But then we had to really think about getting our head around what platforms we could use. We hadn't done much in terms of anything online, really used Teams or Zoom or anything. We were working together a lot, so we would travel to each other's houses to work. So we had to very quickly get around the logistics, as well as trying to understand and learn business in a year that was not typical business. So I think there was a lot of challenges. There was a big chunk of the year where nothing happened and came in for us. But on the upside, I would say it gave us and it forced us to pause and look at some of the stuff I think we would have missed out on for maybe a couple of years. We'd have ticked along for a couple of years with a bit of work, and then we'd have realised we hadn't got things in order, like our marketing and doing some of the fundamentals. And it forced us to start thinking about those before I think we would. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. Becca, you want to add anything?
No, I definitely agree. I think that first 4 weeks, and we hadn't seen each other, had we? Because obviously everything was locked down. It was probably the longest I've ever spent away from Michelle in about 3.5, 4 years, which was just ridiculous. So yeah, it was tough. I think everyone was feeling it. We didn't really know what that meant for the business. I think it was probably, when I look back now, that was when I wobbled. It was my wobble of, oh God, have we done the right thing? Do you know, that moment of, oh, what's this going to mean? We didn't have any idea, did we? And I think to some degree, I think we still don't know really how that's panned out. I mean, thankfully now things are improving a little bit, slowly but surely. But I think as a kind of, with the global pandemic, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if a vaccine was going to come out in 12 months, 2 years, ever. And I think that was all of those aspects of unknown, which I think we were all sharing, compounded a bit of an anxiety for me, I think, around that.
Yeah. And I've been in a lot of forums now around the mental health side, and in particular with businesses. The general opinion and consensus is that there are going to be quite a lot of issues as things are released. Is your take on that and what you're seeing the same, or?
I think it's fair to say
definitely.
that, I think, yeah, the next pandemic's going to be a mental health one, without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's my view on it.
Okay. Michelle,
I think the stats saying that.
Is that what you were going to say, Michelle?
Yeah, exactly. I think, all the evidence shows it's a bubbling issue. People are coping the best they can. And, you're seeing it in sleep is hugely changed for everyone over the past couple of years. With all this, anxiety levels are different. People have retreated a bit. Those that have been staying at home are just, been able to do that. And it's going to change everything again for people positively within their social circles. Everyone wants to get out. But I think in the world of work, it'll bring some challenges in people getting back to that, definitely.
I was spring something on you now. And it's just any tips for people out there that that are going through particular wobbles, like you say. Are there any exercises and things like it? One of the things for me is that I do. In fact, I found a fantastic little GIF, and it's I think it's like a pentagon. I think it is something like that, and it expands out but then closes down. I don't know if you've seen it. And I actually look at that and
for the breathing
in and out to that.
Yeah.
And even just watching it and just regulating it, and it almost becomes like a meditation. But are there other things as well, that you'd recommend for people?
I think this year for me, I'm not a big exercise buff by any stretch of the imagination, but activity, just that walking. For me, it's been a half-hour walk every day. So walking is, or any form of exercise, whether if you have got a particular hobby like that, or if it is just about going for a walk whilst you can and getting fresh air, it's amazing how much good that can do in terms of the mind, your mood. Every time when I used to be in previous clinical practice, anybody who's struggling with mood, even when you're thinking about looking at anxiety, first thing you'd always look at is what you're doing. What does your day-to-day activities look like? Because that's always the quickest win, is thinking about, Michelle and I come from a cognitive behavioural background. So everything that we look at comes from, thinking about it from what are you thinking, how that's impacting how you're behaving, how that impacts how you physically feel, how you emotionally feel. So you're looking at all these interplays and connections. It's much easier to work with a behavior, so changing something that you're doing, than it is to try and tackle the way that you're thinking. Now, it's possible to tackle the way you're thinking, but it often takes more work and it takes longer to do. I think you work with the quick wins in my book, and you go, when you're feeling like you're having a wobble or you're struggling, I always go for the what things are in my circle of control, and they're where I'll reach to first. So it always comes down to physically, what am I putting in my body? So is it, what am I eating? What am I drinking? How's my sleep? And they tend to be my quick wins, because they're things that I can take control of quickly without many barriers to them for myself. It's saying to Michelle not long ago that I was struggling with my sleep again. And as simple as this, but I put my phone on the other opposite table to the bedroom, so it's not on the bedside table. So it just wasn't there, easy to catch in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep. Amazing how 10 days later my sleep's back on track again. And it's just easy things like that you can do, which can be really, really powerful.
Yeah. Anything from you, Michelle, or just same as what Becca was saying?
I definitely echo what Becca says, and I think for me one of the big things is it's just keeping in touch with people. It's been so hard to keep in touch with people, even though we've got all the technology. Everything seems very deliberate. So you'll have meetings or you'll be in touch with someone for a reason, but you've lost that just ad hoc catching up with people. And actually that really bolsters us. It gives us an outlet. It makes us focus on something else. And I think one of the big things is to try not to withdraw from that. It's very easy to think, I can't face another Zoom/FaceTime or whatever it is. But the amount of times I know I have forced myself to do something, and then at the end of it, it's just like, oh, I really enjoyed that actually. I've had a laugh. I feel so much better. You feel that tension's gone a bit, just because you've had that interaction with people. But we can be withdrawn from that a bit because it is a little bit of like screen overload. It's really hard to balance that out. But don't withdraw too much.
Yeah. The habit thing is the one for me, as you say, it is the one that's you can change relatively quickly just by doing a small 2-minute or 1 minute thing. So as an example here is, when I get up, I do heavy weights. So I'm a heavy weights and I do punch bag, and my garage is set out for that. It's got my motorbikes in, my garage is carpeted, so it's all, so I go straight into there, come back out, and so I used to do it of an evening, but I wanted to swap it. I wanted to do it in the evening, because what I was finding, I was getting into the evening, but my meetings and everything was going on, so eventually I'd just miss it and I'd stop doing it. So I wanted to pull it into the morning. So the first thing I have is a cup of coffee in the morning. I am a morning person, straight out, and I'm all ready. So I actually anchored, or as James Clear does with habits, Atomic Habits, I stacked it to the kettle. So before I had my coffee, I'd got to go into the garage and do that, and then had my coffee, and then straight after the coffee, it was a full-blown cold shower, and I do that every single morning now it's got to a stage where I've done that, but now, because I'm not doing the movement, because I'm in the meetings on here and I'm sat here in the room, the studio side I've got, when I go down to make a cup of coffee, I do 100 press-ups whilst the kettle's boiling, and I do it every time now, and that, so it's just these little things, those little habits, just to take that little bit, because while she's standing there waiting for the kettle, you can't do anything else, right, drop 100 press-ups, and just do it.
It's all about creating those barriers.
Yeah, just do something, just get the blood really motion, your heart rate up, and make a difference. So yeah, good, okay, excellent. So what do you wish you had known when you first started up that you know now?
That's a good question.
It's a very good question. As much as I think the excitement of what we were doing has driven us as far and as long as we've got to at this moment, I think there's a lot of things that we didn't know when we first set out, and I think that's always going to be inevitable, but I think there's a lot of things we didn't know about, marketing and LinkedIn. I'll always remember one of our first meetings we had with somebody helping us with our social media marketing, and just realizing how clueless we were in terms of how to use social media for business. It was just, I don't know whether we came off that phone call more distraught or just laughing our heads off as to, oh my God, how naive we've been to this. We just didn't, but you don't know what you don't know. And I guess, I'm not very tech savvy at the best of times, and I've never been one that really loves social media in my personal life. So for me, I've really had to get on board with that, and really it's felt like a very big learning curve for me. But yeah, I think for me, I think all the fundamentals were really, I wish I'd have known how much work it goes into marketing a business. I think that, I think you assume that, stick a couple of posts out and that would be enough, and it's not. And there's a lot more strategy involved in how you do that and what message you're sending and why. And I think there's a lot more to it that I think that I even was aware of in any way, shape or form. And I still think that we're working hard on trying to get there and get that right.
Yeah, 80% of your time will be on marketing. So that's surprising.
Yeah. Whereas I think that I would have gone in going 20% of the time, Adam, 20% is...
Yeah. No, I'm perfect. I don't know whether can't remember whether I've ever told you this story. Is when I set TCM UK Limited up, I'd come out of being a senior executive and had clients, had customer base, but I wasn't marketing. I didn't do marketing. I was an operations person. I was an engineer, so I didn't know sales. So gradually, I could see contracts coming off, petering off, and then I'm starting to think, shit, what am I going to do now? What's happening? And that's where I had my mental health episode. I don't know whether I ever told you. So I was sat there, and my wife would be next to me, and I'd have pains going up the left-hand side of my arm, across my chest, up the left-hand side of my face, and my lips would be going numb. But that was up here. Nothing wrong physically. It's mental. I was playing with the mind was going, excuse me, 100 miles an hour, and it was growing arms and legs, and those legs were growing arms and legs, and I got into a spiral. Got myself sorted, and then got a mentor around it, and that's when I started saying, right, it's the marketing side, 8% marketing, and start building it, and that's where it made the difference. So it is. It's painful at times, bloody painful at times. But that's where all the support and everything like that comes in. So for you, Michelle, so marketing, sales and marketing, what about anything? Is there anything different other than sales and marketing, you would say?
I think we took a long while to realise the value and the power of networking. I think we were started off just doing our own thing, and it was only because of lockdown and everything went online, and we saw something about for an introductory session, come along online for some networking, that we thought we'd give it a go and see what we could learn. And it was only sort of through doing that and trying a few different networking things that we'd learned the power of connecting with other people in various industries, just getting to know people buy from people, and all that. I think we again, if we'd have been ticking along with even a small level of business, I don't think we'd have come to that for a long one.
Yeah, network, you can't. I didn't used to do a lot of networking until the lockdown. That opened up a whole different thing for me, because where I am, I've got to travel, and it takes a whole morning, half a day out for me to do one networking, and I can't afford the time. I couldn't afford the time. So the COVID side for me has had lots of benefits. I'm quite strategical thinking. It's again taught me to look differently at the strategy side. So there's been some good to come out of it. I must admit. Right, we're going to go into some ad hoc questions now. So let's have a look. I've got a list of questions here, so I'm going to pick some out. How do you continue to learn in order to keep abreast of everything and up to date on everything? How do you go about it?
For me, I will trawl through. I've always been a big reader in the sense of academic side of things, so I will trawl through article after article after article. I think it's fair to say that if there's any research being gone and done around something, I'm the one that's straight into the latest journal about whatever it might be. And so I think we really pride ourselves in trying to keep up to date with things, because particularly now we're out of clinical practice, where you obviously absorb quite a lot just naturally because of the role that you're in. I think we have to really keep ourselves ahead and know what's coming out and what's new in the fields, because things do change. Wellbeing particularly, lots of things are coming out, lots of ways of viewing it, and different techniques and different things that we talk about change over time. I think we do a lot of reading around that.
Yeah, because both of you are different.
We kind of...
I was going to come to you, Michelle. I was going to say, both of you got different traits, definitely different traits, and you've got different styles. So I was going to ask Michelle, so from your side, how do you keep up to date and abreast of it as well?
Same basically. So having a look round, we're both obviously from academic background. I think we can both quite confidently use the internet and know where to find good sources. So proper peer-reviewed information, and confidently use that. So there's resources on the internet are brilliant, and sign up and follow a lot of areas where there's a lot of research published, people sharing their research and findings, and even down to things like there's some great things done. I have a good TED talk, people sharing knowledge there, and then I often dig around, well, where did they find that, where's that evidence coming from? And so we kind of tend to bring it together, and then we'll discuss it and use it where it fits with what we do.
You ever thought about doing a TED talk?
I've thought about it, actually. Never been on a... To be fair, I mean, I think for a very long time, us even getting on video was an interesting one.
So now you're saying that, so because I've seen the video. So is that the first video that you've done together, or have you done others prior to that?
No, we've done other videos before, but we've never done live videos. Okay. So I suppose if anybody had insight into what actually went into us recording a 2-minute video, it would possibly take you half a day of stop, re-record. And I think you could drive yourself a little bit round the bend, couldn't you? So in the end, we sort of really need to start doing lives where partly I think it's fantastic for people to know we're there and they can ask questions live in the moment. But also, I'll be honest, part of it will stop us from having to re-record all the time because you can't do a do-over.
Well, I tell you now is that just do it, because you'll never. How can I say? Well, I did one last night. I don't know whether you've seen it. There's 3 of us. We do one every Wednesday. #5:30 live. Yeah, my mic wasn't working for the first 10 minutes, so nobody could hear me. You can see me going like that. Yeah. Nobody could hear me, and it was Kelly that was live watching us, sent me a message, and I've got it up at the side here, sent me a message. Oh, by the way, Adam, your mic's not working. So the other 2 had to take over, and I'm flapping about trying to get my mic working. So yeah, so the unexpected, it'll happen, and it's just you'll never bother about doing a video after you've done live. You really won't.
No, it's amazing how quick we've kind of got a bit more accustomed to it now. We're doing another live tomorrow in our group, and we were saying, it now just becomes, even though we've only done a few of them, it becomes a bit second nature now. It's just what you do, and you just take it in your stride. I think you just need to rip that bandage off with a Facebook Live, and people have been telling us that for months, to be honest. And I think a little bit of avoidance, and just, we'll do a video, but we'll just pre-record it. But you get such a lot. I mean, I was doing the Facebook analytics not long ago, and one of our videos, the first video that we put out, Adam, the reach on that went absolutely wild, and it was just, we'd never seen anything quite like it, just because with it being a Facebook Live. So there's definitely merit in doing it.
This is going out live now. Did you know that?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's recorded. So I might have you on. Well, I was going to say, you don't have to keep it, because I know with some of the qualifications and things like that, you have to keep up with certain hours and things like that. Do you have anything involved with that, with your accreditations or anything like that?
No, we used to have our profession as psychological wellbeing practitioners used to be an accredited profession, and getting a bee in my bonnet if I go too much into it, but they took the accreditation away years ago, and they were looking at replacing it. It hasn't yet been replaced with anything, but we used to have to do like a portfolio that would keep your accredited hours up, and that stopped some years back now, didn't it, Michelle? And I think they're in the process of, there was always talks in the background that something would replace it, but it's yet to be sort of seen. But yeah, so we used to do that. And then in terms of all of my other qualifications, or my masters and things like that, they're academic sort of qualifications rather than practice-based ones. So yeah, we're not kind of like on the nursing standards where you end up having to do a regular sort of keeping your pin topped up and things like that. It's a bit different for us.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. So Michelle, what makes you feel inspired and like your best self?
Most of the time it's Becca. I couldn't do this on my own, and I honestly believe that it's when I'm with Becca or we're doing stuff together that I believe I can. And that's why lockdown's rubbish, because when I'm an hour and a half away, even working over Teams, it's a bit too much distance for the doubt. So definitely within my work life and what we do, I definitely 100% say Becca. Yeah.
Okay, good. Becca, what about you?
Do you know what? It's not even. I would definitely echo Michelle in terms of that, but it's when we're all together. So I think we've got this. I'm going to get really soppy now, but it's this really lovely how it's all fallen together, because Michelle and I would consider are more like sisters than we are best friends, and our husbands are. I don't know how it's ever happened, but they're just like both into exactly the same things. It couldn't have been more perfect if you tried, and it's just actually when we're all together, it's that element of everything feels like we're tackling the world. And I think it really gives us motivation. I think we've seen each other through the worst of times and the best of times, either professionally, personally, and I just think when we're all together, and I think that's what's been hard this year, is we've obviously for reasons because of lockdown, we can get together for work, but our partners can't get together because of obviously there's no reason for them to get together in the same way because it's not work related, and so it's just hard to get us all in the same room. So yeah, that'll be the thing that I'm most looking forward to, is getting back to.
Yeah, so a strong family unit really, even though you are separate families.
It is, and I've said this to Michelle before, but we always hear that saying, it's a very well known saying, but business isn't personal, business is business, business isn't personal. And it is for us. Business isn't just business. It isn't about just ticking the boxes and making money. It's about, this is how we're building our life as a unit. Your household, Michelle, and our household. It's just this, we've got a shared dream of where we want to go. And it's more than that. I feel accountable for you because I know that it impacts your life and vice versa. It's more than business. It is personal for us. And I think that's maybe what makes it a bit unique.
Yeah, no, that's good, because there is, you hold each other accountable, which is a good way to do it as well. So Michelle, you'll notice I'm looking over here because I've got the questions. So as I'm picking the ones to ask you. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
A billboard? Wow.
And it can be business or personal, you know. It doesn't matter, you know. If you can have a billboard, what would be on it and why? And it's a bit unfair because I've asked you the question and Becca's got time to think about this because she's going to answer this one as well. So.
Yeah.
Do you want me to answer and then give you that?
Go on then.
No,
I'll go first in case you have to say. Michelle thinks, if you've got an answer.
What would I have on a billboard? Doesn't have to be work related or personal. It could be anything.
So if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Work hard, laugh harder.
Okay. Good.
I think that sums up what we do. It's that every time we sit in any training room when we've spent hours and hours labouring over the content and all the practicalities of doing a session, I always just remember the blood, sweat, tears, and the absolute laughter, the belly aching laughter that we have putting into it. You know, they are little babies of our own, aren't they, in terms of each piece of work that we do, because we put so much into it. And the laughter that we put into it is, if people could watch us, wow, it's
good.
Yeah, it's hilarious. But that's for me.
So Michelle,
you went all inspirational. You went inspirational. The thing came to mind for me is I'd love a billboard with an absolutely massive, remember those magic eye pictures?
Yeah.
From like the 90s. I used to love those magic eye pictures, but what I loved more was watching other people try and get them. Because I just think, this is brilliant. So I just love a massive one of those. You could just stand back and watch all the people that, So yours is so much more inspirational.
That's great, good. Now then, we'll start off with Becca with this one. This is a long question.
Do I need to take notes?
Yeah. If in 150 years science fails to save us and all that is left is a book about your life, what would the title be and what would the blurb tell us about Becca? Now Michelle's got some time to think about this.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a very good question. What would a book be? Oh, you've thrown a good one out there, Adam. Where'd you get these questions from? Wow. 150 years, science fails. What would I have as a book?
What would the title of your book be? And what would the blurb say about Becca and Michelle?
Do you know what? I hope that in 150 years' time, not science fails us, but I have enough insight to go that the title would be Don't Sweat the Small Things, because I know that I spend a huge amount of my time worrying about the small things. And I've got a little plaque that hangs above in my kitchen, and it says, basically, don't worry about the small things, because one day you'll realise the small things are really the big things. And I think that that's kind of what I want, I want to get to a stage where I really embody that, where I actually don't worry about small things, because you're really not going to ever remember those things, are you? It's the big things, it's the relationships that you make along the way. So I think it's, don't sweat the small things, don't put that extra, wash your laundry and, go and spend time with people that really matter. And I think that hopefully when I see my end of my days in, that's really what it's all going to be about, is the people that you've met along that journey, rather than all the things that you've ticked off and you've achieved along the way. It's who's at the end of the race with you. Yeah. That's for me.
Good. Michelle.
Okay, I think I would probably be along the lines of, I think I might be missing something. And it would just be, a bit of a blurb around just being an ongoing quest for like curiosity, knowledge, and doubt. You know, just keeping looking, always curious, trying to make sense. Not quite sure, but yeah, maybe I'm missing something. I'm not quite sure, but
good.
Looking.
Good. How is it's an interesting one. I should have asked this one earlier on. Actually, is how has failure or apparent failure set you up for later success?
I think for me, I think failure, you learn what doesn't work. So you learn some practical things what doesn't work. But for me, it's more personal in that you learn that you survive. I think even on the toughest days, even when stuff goes wrong, me and my husband have got a saying, you know, at the end of the day, we'll often, if someone's had a tough day, it'll be, well, 100% survival rate so far. You know, and it's just, yeah, learning that these things happen, but you still survive and you still carry on, as well as kind of the technical stuff. I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah,
definitely.
Good.
Yeah, definitely.
Becca, anything different?
I think, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think for me, it's what I consider to be failure, I guess. I think I've come a really long way personally, professionally, in terms of what I deem as failure. I think that what I look back on now, and if I was an 18 or 19-year-old self at university, I would be beating myself up left, right, and centre about, well, I didn't do enough. I didn't do that well enough. It was, you know, I failed at that. And actually, I don't know if I could have failed, because where all of those things resulted in me being here and where I'm at now, and I don't consider that to be a failure. So I think for me, it's about what is questioning what is failure? What does failure look like? Because I don't think, I'd even go as far as to say I don't think it exists.
Yeah.
I don't think that failure is a thing. I think it's about how we perceive ourselves, and I think it's about confidence. So I try not to go down the route of I'm failing. I go down the route of where's this going to lead me? It's just that it's another dead end in the road. It's just leading you somewhere else, rather than it being that you've done something that's not good enough.
Good positive outlook, that one. Very good.
Told you she's great for positive.
Yeah. So, here's one. Let's start with Michelle on this one. What should I ask you that I didn't know enough to ask you?
Ooh. Wow.
This is one of the hardest questions.
What should you ask me? Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you haven't got anything. It's not a problem. Just sometimes it just throws it because it gets people thinking.
Yeah.
Done anything reckless? See, I've had somebody turn around and tell me, yeah, I've been in a porn movie.
Random.
Definitely not that. Wouldn't ask. No. My claim to fame was done early, I think. If you ask me about my claim to fame when I was young, I think I'll anchor it about when I was about 5 or 6, and I performed at the Royal Albert Hall in front of the Queen. So no one ever really knows about that because it was a bit too long ago. But yeah, I got it in early as my claim to fame.
There must be videos on that, though. Must be.
I was about to say, if we can, that's our next Facebook Live if ever I see it.
Do you know how old I am? Videos in those days. There's newspaper cutting somewhere that my dad's got that's gone yellow somewhere. But yeah, I don't think there's even many photos, never mind video.
Okay, good. Becca?
I guess one of my guilty pleasures that a lot of people don't tend to know about is my favourite place on earth is Vegas. So I'm a bit of a gambler. As much as all my positivity, yeah, I'll gamble, and not in a bad way, but you know, if I'll be the one that takes a punt on it, wouldn't I, Michelle?
What's making me laugh here is Michelle going.
Yeah, she's going. Yeah. God, the amount of things that
I've
never
been to Vegas. Never been to Vegas with her, but I've been to the seaside in an arcade with her, and that's terrifying enough.
Oh no, that's amazing me. I'd never put you down as a gambler. No way in earth.
Yeah, nothing better. I always remember, and it's when we went to Vegas. Oh God, I've don't even count how many times I've been now. And I remember the rule when my husband and me went to Vegas, it was right, we don't leave the hotel, whatever you do, just feel free to go about, whatever, in the middle of the night, whatever, if you, because I've never been a good sleeper. And so it was the one place where you could just leave a note, post a note by the bed, gone gambling. And yeah, so it was brilliant. So it's the best place on earth for me. But yeah, it doesn't sleep. So it's a Las Vegas is up all night, all day, all night, and it never stops. So yeah, absolutely love it. Can't wait to be able to get back.
Biggest win?
Biggest win would have been on the blackjack table, and probably around the kind of $250, I think. But it was a starting with a $5 bet, over a few drinks and a good couple of hours later. But yeah, it's good fun. Like I say, I'm not claiming that I'm a big, high roller better, but it's good fun, and we've enjoyed the benefits of it over time. Freebie shows because of how much you've gambled over the time. Yeah, not one of my ones that I tend to advertise too much, but I do love a little bit of a flutter. It's good fun.
Excellent.
As long as you're willing, what you're willing to lose. I think that's the rule for gambling is go with an amount you're willing to lose, and then you never really come back as a loser. I think you've already allocated it. I think that's my rule on it.
Yeah, always have a plan. Always
go with the plan.
Great. So I think it comes up to around about the hour that we normally do. It's gone quick. So where can people find you? So and I will put them in so I'll ask you for a little bio. We'll send that, and I'll put that in the post of the blog, the podcast, with your links in as well. So, but where can people find you? So what's your web address?
Yeah, so it's www.aspiretraining.solutions. And I'm thinking about our email then.
Yeah, brilliant. Any social media side? Got Facebook? I know you got Facebook group, Facebook page, and things like that.
Yeah.
They might be a bit long to.
We're on LinkedIn and we're on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
And we've got Instagram now, haven't we, as well, Michelle?
I've just started playing around with Instagram, so we've got find us on there. But you'll you usually see there's a picture of the two of us for our logo pages and things like that. So you can usually spot us when you find us.
Instagram's an interesting one. The visuals and good visual, high visual stuff on Instagram does work well. And I don't know whether you've seen my latest blog. It goes into a little bit of the stuff with marketing strategy, 8 tips for marketing strategy, which is the latest blog that I've just done. It was only out on Tuesday. But as I say, I'll put all the links in the description for everybody that wants to come and find you and connect with you. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it. It wasn't too painful.
Thank you for having us.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's been great.
Good.
Yeah.